What is going on, snooker fans? The final full ranking event before the World Championship has come to an end, and we are now in that final stretch of the season with just the 3 tournaments from the 1 year list left to go before Sheffield. And I usually end my tournament reviews by talking about the champion, but I'm going to start this time by talking about John Higgins, who finally, after a 4-year wait, has his hands on a title again. And it has been a long old wait for the Scot, who, let's not forget, did briefly fall out of the top 16 earlier this season. But that really seems a long old time ago now. And this win hasn't exactly come out of the blue either. He has been putting himself into positions to win titles ever since winning that Players' Championship back in 2021. He had lost 5 finals in a row in those 4 years and had a pretty brutal few months where he lost the Northern Ireland Open 9-8 from 8-6 ahead. He then done the exact same thing in the English Open final 1 month later, and then later in that season lost the Tour Championship final despite being 9-4 ahead. So no one could blame him if those losses started to take its toll on him, but his perseverance has at long last paid off. Now, the cynics among you may point to the fact that John won this title without having to play anyone within the world's top 20, and we know he has often struggled to get past his fellow top players recently, but as the old saying goes, you can only beat who's in front of you, and with the near misses John suffered over the past few years, who could really begrudge him from getting a slice of good fortune in terms of the draw opening up for him? And I did mention a couple of weeks ago that Mark Selby would have boosted his chances of winning the world title this spring, and the exact same could very well apply to John here, another man who has won the title 4 times before, and it's just such a hard nut to crack at the Crucible. The concern I personally have with John is I'm not sure he still has the stamina to last a full 17-day slog at the Crucible, but he will now be full of confidence and may also be worth keeping at least half an eye on in Sheffield. But now, if I look at the tournament overall, it will be a fairly brief overview this week because the timings didn't really work in my favour. Obviously, the tournament being in China just collided with my work schedule last week, and I could only really watch most of the tournament through highlights, and the only live action I did manage to watch was from the semi-finals and the final. But someone that I could watch was Joe O'Connor, who made it through to his 2nd career final after reaching the Scottish Open final back in 2022. Now, as is quite standard, Joe struggled to push on from that first final appearance 2.5 years ago, but he of course did beat Mark Selby at the Crucible last year, and after a pretty decent showing at the Championship League a few weeks ago, got very close to winning his first title. Getting wins over Judd Trump, Shaun Murphy and Ali Carter in the process is some going as well, and I thought all round he was very impressive in that semi-final. Unfortunately, he couldn't really settle into that first session of the final, and once he fell 6-1 behind to a player like John Higgins, it was always going to be incredibly difficult. But after seeing so many young Chinese talents make finals this season, it's good to see there's still some young homegrown talent knocking around in the game too, and I do certainly think Joe has the game to get to the very, very top of the sport. Then perhaps the standout performer of the week was Surety, who out of nowhere made it to his first ever career semi-final. In fact, he had never been past the last 16 of any event before last week. This season has been littered with first round exits too, but having looked at his scorecards from last week, he put on an exhibition of scoring, making 7 centuries and quite a few other single visit breaks as well. So he was good value for his semi-final appearance. The only blemish was from 5-3 up against John Higgins in that semi-final. He had chances in all 3 of the remaining frames but couldn't take any of them. And despite having a really, really great week last week, I'm sure letting those chances go to make a ranking event final will sting just a little bit. The 4th man to make it to the semi-finals last week was Ali Carter, and I talked in my last video about how Ali is projected to lose his top 16 seeding for the Crucible, but back-to-back semi-finals do no harm at all in helping his cause. That run included wins in deciding frames over Jack Lisowski and Barry Hawkins, which could be huge for his chances of automatically making it to the World Championship. He's still not done quite enough to get back into the top 16 on that Race to the Crucible list. However, you'll already see the difference from my last video where Ali has climbed up to 17th. And then you've got Neil Robertson, who was 16th after the Welsh Open. He's now dropped down to 18th. But the biggest thing that has come from these back-to-back semi-finals for Carter is he has shot up to 16th on the 1 year list. so has every chance of making it to the Players' Championship in addition to the World Grand Prix. And we know every match is going to be so important over the coming weeks, and he could do with maybe one more semi-final appearance to help boost his chances even more. But like I say, it is harder to review this tournament as a whole because I simply didn't watch enough of it. Shaun Murphy, well, he made another 147 following up from his Masters maximum in January, so he is still clearly full of confidence. Judd Trump made 5 centuries in 2 matches last week before losing to Joe O'Connor, which takes his tally for centuries this season up to 79, just 21 tons away from the 100,000 bonus, and he has a maximum of 4 tournaments left to achieve that goal. And then if we look ahead, 4 massive tournaments left in this snooker season before it's all over. On a side point, I'm not a massive fan of the scheduling this season by having all 3 one-year list tournaments back-to-back right at the end of the season, because you are now completely limited to who can make the Players and the Tour Championship. But that is a really minor thing for me to be complaining about. And regardless of that fact, I am very much locked in for this huge month of snooker that is ahead of us, starting in Hong Kong next week for the World Grand Prix.